Hey everyone, this is our next episode of Christians Make Bad Art. I'm really excited about this week's episode because I get to have a nice long phone call with my good and old friend Nico, who is one of my favorite people in the whole world. He and I were in a Christian metal band back in high school and in college that toured around a little bit. We recorded an album. He was one of my best friends in the whole world, and but now he is no longer a Christian. And so we get to talk about the whole idea of what it means to be a Christian artist, what it means to create art now that he's not a Christian. This one is definitely worth listening all the way through, so give it a listen, let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Run, buddy, all your life. So really, before, as I was kind of preparing for tonight, I whipped out an old DVD of our Tempest of Torment concert in Dodge City with Spoken, and
oh yeah,
I watched it and I was just horrified. I was watching myself and literally felt sick to my stomach.
Dude, I found, I have an old CD booklet, big CD case with a bunch of random CDs in it that I hadn't gone through in years. And I had 4 copies of our fucking album in there. I was like, no way, I popped that shit in. Totally listened to it. It's like, boy, that's not great. For sure.
And it's so funny because Kasha came in when I was watching it, and she's like, thank you so much for growing up. Thank you.
That hurts my feelings. Tell her I said that.
Well, so really, I kind of wanted to dive right in. Basically, people don't know about our band, thank God.
Yeah.
But so just kind of for listeners, giving them kind of a little bit of a background of how we met. You went to school in Greensburg, and so we met. Was it my? It would have been my senior year, right? And your junior year.
Yes.
And you were going to youth group at Tony Factor's youth group, right?
Yes.
And you were in... Okay, now here's where I'm really testing my memory. You were in a band with him, which is really, really weird. You were in a band with him called A Field Stained Red, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember the name of that band.
Yeah.
So you were in that band, and I can't remember how you and I met. I think Tony invited me to one of the youth groups or something.
We met playing baseball.
Oh, that's right. We first met.
And we started talking about music, and we had got together and played guitar one day, and I suggested to Tony that you be a part of the band because we needed a second guitarist.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about baseball. Ugh. Yeah. That was a great year. That was a good year. So then I came to a practice, and I remember being super intimidated by Tony, first of all, because not only was he actually a really good guitar player, but it was just I felt judged by him for some reason.
Tony definitely had a little bit of a complex when you showed up, for sure. He felt like you were showing up to muscle him out of his spot, I feel like.
Yeah. It's well, sorry, bro, you're not going to be the only chubby guitar player in this band now.
Now we got two chubby dudes.
Now we got two chubby dudes. We should have changed the name. But then, so we had Javid on drums, Payton on bass, and I remember, so you guys were going to go into the studio with Dustin and record a Field Stain Red album. And I think I was coming too, so we all ended up at the studio, and Tony didn't come.
He never showed up, never called, no nothing, just like completely radio silent for the day.
And that's when you and I had this idea, hey, what if we, because I think we had just messed around at, I think it was Javid's house, and we had kind of written a song. We had written that one song, Fire Breather, and we're like, let's try and record it. And we recorded it and came back with a recorded version of that, and we remember it. I just remember being like jacked at the end of that day.
Oh yeah, I was super stoked, man,
because it sounded pretty damn good for
compared to everything that we had been playing with the Field Stain Red prior to that. That was more the direction that we wanted to go. That was like the sound that we wanted to portray playing music together, and that was one thing Tony was never down with, was going any heavier. We were stuck in that alternative 90s rock.
Yeah, like oh gosh.
A little heavier than, I can't even, it was like Nickelback.
Yeah, and like 5-minute solos by Tony, which they were good, but it was a little much. And
every fucking song, I mean, that gets super fucking boring if every song has a 3-minute solo right in the middle of it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, then Javid, we ended up being real jerks and kicking Javid out of the band because he could only play one beat. And we got Darren from Barkley, and then we were on a roll.
Yep.
And so, but we were pretty much writing songs in the studio as we were going, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
We started strictly as a studio band. Like, we wrote every day that we had a studio appearance, we were writing a song in the studio and recording it.
Yeah, which I remember that being like crazy fun. It was just really fun to experiment and do stuff that we were really diving headfirst into a genre none of us really knew anything about. And we were just like, let's just do what feels good, and it was a blast. Like, I had so much fun.
Dude, I remember the day that, because I remember sometimes, for some reason, Dustin just got super annoyed with you.
Constantly. Well, he had a right. I was a total... Dude, my arrogance level was on 11. I mean...
Dude, I still fucking remember the day, though, that I was totally fucking with you because you were trying to record this part, and you had been trying to record it for, like, probably 30 minutes. And I was fucking with you, and you turned around and you were like, can you guys just chill the fuck out? And Dustin hadn't said anything all day. And he just slowly turns around in his chair and looks at you. It's like, language. And then just turns back around.
Yeah, dude, I mean, it's one of those things where I look back on those times and I'm still really proud of what we did, because we did something that most kids in our position couldn't have done. I still have some shame on how I related to people, and but anyway, I mean, so really kind of getting into that, so we considered ourselves a Christian metal band. I mean, all our lyrics were Christian. I mean, Payton wrote a lot of the lyrics. I wrote some of the lyrics. Most of them were like how we talk to God, or straight out of the Bible with the Samaritan song. And so here's just diving right into it. Were you struggling with your faith at that point?
I definitely was, for sure.
And I mean unbeknownst to all of us, because I never expected that.
Yeah, I don't know, for a while, I mean, probably from the age of, I had questions about it, a lot of questions about it from like 14 on, and I had asked multiple people, talked to my mom about it, not a whole lot because, you know, how much of a nightmare that feels like, trying to talk to your parent about the fact that you feel like you might be losing your faith.
Yeah, in small town rural America, where church is everything.
Oh no, I definitely, I was struggling a lot with that whole concept. I don't know, for me, and to this day, the biggest issue that I had was it all just felt like a massive logical fallacy. Like, it just, to me, it never made any sense. There were so many things that contradicted themselves. Like, the whole message that God is love and God is forgiving, of course, that's great. I mean, that makes total sense. Why not believe in an omniscient, all-powerful being that genuinely cares about you and your life and every decision that you make and hopes that you are okay? Like, that's great to have that sense of security. But there were so many other things on top of that, that at that age where I really started to, like, do a lot of thinking for myself, it really started to not make sense to me. And I will definitely admit, the entire time we were in Tempest of Torment, I was definitely going through my own mental tempest of torment. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, as ironic as it was, I think the one time that I wondered if you were going through something was when we had the idea of, like, oh, dude, we should start the whole album praying. And, like, I got on the mic and I did a prayer, and then you got on the mic, but I remember you being really uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
I remember you just being like, you know, I don't even really remember what you said, but I just remember the air changing when we asked you to pray on the mic, and I could just tell you weren't really sure about it. And I think that's when I first started kind of go, I wonder what he's going through. But of course, me being, you know, the very extremely naive family Christian bookstore Christian that I was, you know, I'm like, oh, he's fine. He, you know, but really, I mean, that's what I think my biggest regret is, that I was such an ass during that whole time that probably one of your only, like, truly claiming to be devout Christian friends, and I had no idea that you were going through that.
I mean, dude, that's the thing, though, is nobody knew. I never said really anything to anyone. Like, when I say I asked questions, I didn't preface any of those questions that I was asking people with, so I'm struggling with my faith, and this is something. It was always just like, hey, I'm curious about this. Like, what do you think about it?
Yeah.
Nobody ever knew at all. Like, it was definitely one of those things for sure, though. Like, being a front man who was, like, kind of supposed to talk between songs and, like, saying prayers and stuff when we started. By the end of that all, I felt like a massive hypocrite, because I had really started to get to the point where it wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate to admit it, like, our final show that we played together, I was kind of relieved that we were done.
Oh, dude, it was... I mean, you weren't the only one. I was relieved. Because, you know, Kasha she was pressuring me to be done for good reasons, because it was not bringing out the best in me. It was bringing out the worst in me. Because I'm like, we're going to go big. We're going to get famous. And it was... I even remember having a conversation with her saying, like, look, if you're not okay with us being a big Christian band and me being on tour, then maybe we should just end this. And it was like, at that moment, when I heard those words come out of my mouth, I knew that Tempest of Torment, this silly Christian band we were in was not healthy for me.
Yeah.
And Darren, and I'm sure Peyton had similar thoughts, because Darren was, married and on his way to having kids. But so, I mean, kind of hitting on those lines, what was it like for you being in this Christian band, singing Christian words, and so basically being a Christian artist, creating Christian art in a really interesting Christian metal genre? What was that like for you, trying to do that while also struggling with your faith?
I don't know, man. I think for me, one of the reasons, like now, most of the music stuff that I do, like I write all of my own lyrics. I got really into writing when I left college, so like when I'm writing a song, I am focusing on the lyrics, but for me being in Tempest of Torment, since I wasn't doing the lyrics, I was just doing vocals, it was a lot easier for me to disassociate that the whole concept of what the song was about, because I was just focusing on the vocal rhythm and the music and stuff. So I don't know, I think it was a lot easier for me to not be the lyricist, because I was able to separate those two things, and I just focused on the music. So it never really, like, I guess for lack of a better term, hindered me from creating the music. But when we would play shows, that was when it was an issue. Like, creating the music for me was fun. I had a good time. I was just excited to, like, try some new stuff, some new vocal rhythms, some new, like, styles of vocals and see how they sounded. I just was interested in what it sounded like. The shows were really the only time where, like, I would walk off stage and feel super uncomfortable about the whole situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could you not with what you were going through? And, because I remember even other people would talk to us after the show, like, oh my gosh, tell me about your faith and all this stuff. And it's in those moments where you're like, oh crap, that's right. We're this.
Yeah.
And
I was not super talkative. Outside of our, like, small group of dudes that we played with, like the guys from For the Love of God.
I
was super comfortable with talking to those guys, but like random kids that would ask questions like that, like I knew that was what was coming, so I just kind of like hid in the wings.
Yeah. I
was definitely a lot more antisocial after the shows were over, because I don't know, dude. I had a lot on my mind every time we played a show and we were done, so I didn't really feel like talking to random strangers. And on top of that, like, who am I to be super negative when some kid comes up and asks me about my faith, and I just, like, dump a truckload of shit on him about how I'm just, oh, I don't know, dude, my faith's pretty awful. Like, it's definitely wavering. I wasn't going to do that to somebody, because, you know what? Everybody's got their thing. And even at that point in time, I knew just because I was wavering in my faith didn't mean that it was okay for me to shit all over somebody else's joy and happiness that they found in believing in God.
Yeah.
I definitely held a lot of resentment, for sure, after it was all said and done with. But
well, and that's,
I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing that, so when we were done after our last show in Salina, right, we were done, we packed up, we went home, and we pretty much didn't see each other. I mean, it was eerily, I don't even know how to describe it. It was eerily a really sharp contrast from when we were just spending time together all the time. I mean, I was trying to convince you to come to Barkley and be my roommate, and I was just, truly, dude, like in high school, you were my best friend. So I was like trying to spend as much time with you as I could. And then all of a sudden when the band was over, we all just like split up. But then I remember you gave me a call. I can't remember like where in the timeline. You might be able to refresh my memory, but that's when you told me, you're like, dude, I am not a Christian anymore. And I don't even know if I ever really was.
Yeah.
And
no, I definitely.
Oh, dude, that phone call.
I definitely remember that because that was. See, I had gone to school in October of 2009, and that was like spring of 2010.
Yeah,
something like that.
Because I remember I had been married for a while, and I was working in the church. I was a youth pastor at that point, and I remember that call like it was yesterday. And it's not like I can even really remember what what I said, and I probably don't even want to know what I said, but I remember just feeling heartbroken. But it's also one of those things where I look back and I just remember I'm just not even the same kind of person anymore. I'm not even the same kind of Christian anymore. I was extremely legalistic back then. And so I'm sure I said a lot of things that pushed you away even further.
Actually, dude, if I can tell you this, and I hope that it makes you feel a little better about what you don't remember, is you were actually incredibly understanding and accepting about it when I told you.
Really?
You asked me why. Yeah, you were. You asked me why, and I explained to you, and you told me, like, you know what, that makes sense. I can understand why you would feel that way. I definitely, out of all the people that I told when it first became a reality to me that I never really quite understood any of that, and I was just kind of raised in it, even though it never made sense to me. Like, I just followed it blindly. You were probably the only one that I told that acted like it really wasn't that big of a deal and made me feel a little more comfortable about like being able to say something about it.
Well, wow. I did not remember that. You are so sweet. You're such a sweetheart. Bless your heart. I've been in Texas too long. I'm saying Texas things. It's not good. But yeah, I mean, and then after that, we didn't talk for maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long time. But I remember even during those years, I mean, this will give you a little bit of into my evangelical mind. I prayed, I'm like, God, just give me an open door with Nico where I could win him back for you. And I prayed that for years, dude. I prayed that. And until I finally just like gave up, and I'm like, okay, we're probably never going to talk again. And it was funny because when I gave up, when I said we're probably never going to talk again, that's when we started talking again. And it was almost like God wanted me to get off the plate of trying to win your soul back. And it was like God was saying, no, you don't get to talk to your friend until you leave that crap behind.
Yeah.
You know, which is like totally counter what you and I were taught growing up, right? I mean, that's just totally different.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but really, so now for people to kind of so now that people have context into kind of where you're at, where I'm at, you're a tattoo artist now, and you also write lyrics, and you're still doing music.
Yeah.
And now I am a student life director at a Christian high school. I'm church planting, and I'm still doing music as well, but really different music. Like I'm not doing metal anymore. Really depressing folk music, actually. So,
dude, that's totally cool. I love super depressing folk music, so you'll have to send me over some of your stuff.
Oh, dude, I will. Don't you worry, a pretty little penny. I will.
For sure.
So here's a good question, though, that I was thinking about that I wanted to hear you talk about a little bit is, what is the biggest difference from when you were creating Christian art and now that you're creating non-Christian art, if we had to put labels on it?
Yeah. No, I definitely understand what you're saying, and actually had a really interesting conversation with my stepsister, who is the piercer at the shop that I worked at the other day.
Oh, sweet! I
And
didn't know that.
we were just kind of having a conversation about inspiration, and I think for me, one of the biggest differences that I've noticed is growing up, I have always been super attracted to like really macabre-esque, like really dark artwork, like things that just like monsters and like depictions of, well, my dad used to just call it death because I love to draw skulls all the time, but
I remember that.
I don't know. I just, for me, I found an entire new realm of inspiration when I was able to wash my mind clean of like all of the rules and regulations of what it means to be a Christian per se. Like making artwork for me, like simple, very, very simple example, nudity.
Yeah.
Like doing classical art, like old school paintings, body studies, there is a lot of nudity. It is such a weird thing. Like my mom, even to this day, like she's starting to get comfortable with my artwork now, but there are a lot of drawings that I have done that have nudity in them, and she would get super uncomfortable about it. But the thing is, it's a human body. Like, I find inspiration everywhere. Some of my best inspiration comes from very, very dark places. Like, some of my best work has come from days where I am feeling kind of in the dumps, or I'm just really angry about something. Using that inspiration helps me, like, dive into the depths of my mind, because regardless of who you are, everybody's got a really dark part of their mind that if you're a Christian, when you're feeling those days, anyways, what I grew up being told is when you're feeling days like that, God is just testing you, testing your faith, and it's a chance for you to prove to God that your faith in Him is strong, so you get down on your knees and you pray, and you feel better about the day because you know that God's in your corner. And for me, I got to the point where when I was having those days, I would embrace it. Because if there's one thing that I have learned when it comes to creating artwork is there is beauty inside darkness. Some of the most incredible pieces of artwork I have ever seen are also some of the darkest pieces of artwork I have ever seen. And incredibly just dark, strange individuals that make this work. But it's because they've embraced that part of their mind, and their way of coping with stuff like that is to pour it out on paper, whether that be through pencil, paint, pastels, whatever your medium is. And that also includes artwork, or music, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the artists that I listen to, like Thy Art is Murder, for example. It's a lovely name, for sure. But they just released an album called Holy War, and the entire album is just, it is talking about the darkness of this entire, like, political world atmosphere.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess for me, going from trying to create artwork, sorry, I was kind of rambling for a minute.
No.
Trying to create artwork as a Christian, like trying to keep that in mind while I was doing my artwork, and then just trying to create artwork no holds bar, like just letting my mind spill itself. I feel like, I don't know, a lot more liberated. I can do whatever I want, like whatever comes to mind. I don't have any stipulations other than the typical artistic stipulations, like if it's not a good composition and it doesn't look good, don't do it.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I don't know, I feel a lot more liberated in the things that I can do and the things that I find inspiration for sure.
So do you think, so, the whole point of this podcast is to kind of talk about, why there's this stigma that Christians make bad art. And I think you actually just touched on it beautifully because, I don't know when the last time you turned on popular Christian radio, but it's all crap.
It's been years, man.
Good for you, because I'll turn on popular Christian radio and I'm just like, I'm sickened by how generic it is and how it doesn't feel honest. It just feels really soulless to me. And so there's this idea that, that I that hit me and was the inspiration for this, this YouTube channel podcast where I said, why is it that I feel like Christians just make bad art? Like what is it? And I think you hit on it when you said, as a Christian artist, if you come out and you're like, yes, I am a Christian artist, I am proclaiming Christ with my art, and you get into the mainstream Christian art world, especially music, there are 1,000,001 stipulations and rules and filters that you have to go through before your art should be public into the Christian world. Do you think that's true?
Oh yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And there is definitely one thing I will say that in my mind, I feel like, especially in the Christian music world, one of the reasons why things don't feel like they have changed, and it's something that I noticed when I really started struggling with my faith. At my church that I grew up in, it was very like, there was an old man that went to our church once and visited, and then he came to our house, and we were having a conversation. And my parents loved the church because of the people in the church.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily love the way that the church was ran. They didn't necessarily agree with everything, but the community was nice. And this elderly gentleman had come to our house for dinner, and I was sitting at the table while him and my parents were having a conversation about how he felt the church service was and how he felt about our church community. And we went to a Church of Christ, and I still, to this day, will remember what he said. We have a name for a large majority of the people, the kind of people that go to that church, and it's called Old Crusty Church of Christers.
Oh my gosh.
I know, and I started laughing just because I was like 11 years old and I thought that was hilarious, but I really started to think about it once I got older. It was very cut and dry, like literal Bible translation church.
Yeah.
So, jumping from that to going to youth group with Deb and Tony, the Youth for Christ, it was much more involved. Like, there were times when somebody would be saying a prayer and people were totally invited to, like, come up and kneel and, like, invite God into your heart. And I picked something up because there were days when they would be praying and they would do that and, like, no one would get up. But then there were days when Deb was praying and Tony would just be standing in the background playing really light, ambient, like, sad-sounding music. And all of a sudden, all of these kids would get up. And I started to realize something. It's like, I don't think that these kids were actually feeling the Holy Spirit inside of them, and that's what made them want to get up and go beg for God to get into their life. It was the fact that the music that was playing behind the words was so moving that they were feeling the music. It was for lack of a better term, emotional hype created by the sound that Tony was, the ambient noise that Tony was making behind the prayer, which made the words from the prayer that much stronger. Because without the music, I don't know if you've seen, perfect example, there's a great speech by Charlie Chaplin from The Dictator. And he comes up and he gives a speech about how he does not want to be a leader. He would rather help everyone. And it is an incredibly moving and powerful speech. But if you listen to the speech, they have a version of it on YouTube with the music from, I can't remember what movie it is, but with the music behind it, that speech will bring you to tears.
Wow.
But without the music behind it, you just get to the end of it, and I mean, it's a great speech, and you feel a little empowered. But with the music behind it, that speech will make you cry.
Whoa. Well, it's similar to like if you watch a scary movie and you take the music away, it's like not scary anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same principle, right?
Exactly. No, for sure. And I think that was my point with that whole tangent was I think the reason why the music inside the Christian music industry hasn't changed is because if you go to most of these contemporary Christian concerts, it is basically a massive worship session.
Yeah.
So you are thinking about the words and you have God on your mind, and then the music is behind that, just emotionally pushing you and drawing you in. So there's really been no need for Christian artists in the music industry to, in my mind anyways, actually push themselves to get out of their comfort zone and make better music, more progressive, more technical, more just create a new genre of music because it works. If it's the old adage, if it's not broke, why fix it, is
oh gosh.
perfect.
Yeah, you're so right. That's so true. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I remember because when I first started at my church, when I was, oh gosh, this was right after we broke up, the band, and I started, our pastor, we broke up.
Right.
I mean, the band.
Throw that in there real fast.
The band, Christian. My pastor, I started playing guitar behind him, his ending prayer, and after church, he came over to me and he was like really angry with me. And he's like, don't you ever do that again. And I'm like, well, why? I mean, that's what we always do at church. You know, that's what we always do to get people to, you know, start feeling something. And he's like, I don't want to emotionally rape these people. I want them to feel Jesus when he's really there. And I remember like, whoa, it's really true. I mean, it's really, really true how, and I've noticed this at places where this is just kind of a norm for churches to play music at the end of a sermon when and people start saying amen, they start raising their hand, you know, the energy starts coming up, and you wonder, like, if the music wasn't playing, would they still be doing the same thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, man, that was one of the biggest things that I noticed that really, like, bugged me. Noticed it, pretty sure, it was about 15 when that first registered in my mind. And from that point on, it made me question everything. Because up until then, I just genuinely thought that people were feeling the Spirit. And I just couldn't for some reason.
Yeah. Well,
and then...
Go ahead.
And then that registered in my mind, and I was like, hold on. So it's just the music. Like, that's what's making people feel emotional. Like, it made me start to question everything, because that right there, in and of itself, was... I felt like I had been deceived, because I was so disappointed with myself. I couldn't feel God. I was never able to feel God in those moments where other people were. So I was really disappointed. I wanted to feel that because it looked amazing, but I was never able to. And then all of a sudden, that registered in my mind, and I felt like I had been deceived for so long. Like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me.
Wow.
I just figured something out that nobody else figured out, I guess. But it definitely, I mean, I can't say that I was not super disappointed for a long time that I had never felt the Spirit of God. Because everybody else that I knew had, or said that they had.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and I think so. As I think about like the biggest differences between some of my favorite Christian artists and some of my favorite like non-Christian artists, I would say that it's really, I have, there's an artist who's probably my favorite, one of my favorite singer-songwriters. His name is David Ramirez. And he is, pretty blatantly in some of his songs, he's a Christian. I mean, you can tell. But then in other songs, he's dropping an F-bomb, or he's talking about these things that Christians won't normally talk about. And it's so refreshing in that I'm like, here's a guy who is honest about his faith, but also honest about his deep darkness as well. And I'm like, I feel like if we could get more artists like him, people who are Christian or non-Christian, let's take that label off of the art, whether it's Christian or non-Christian. Let's just call it art, and let's make it be honest with whatever it is. So if you're honestly like in love with God, great, sing about it. And if you honestly think that life sucks, great, write about it. But just have your art be as honest and transparent as possible.
I mean, I totally 100% agree with that. Like, don't put a face on it. Just because you're a Christian artist does not mean that you have to fit inside the parameters. Because we already have a bunch of cookie-cutter Christian musicians. Be something that's outside the box. If you want to make art that is you. Not art that you think other people will appreciate. Make your art. Leave people with something that the next time they see a piece or hear a song, they immediately know who it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another good example is, so I don't know, there's a really popular worship song out there that it's been since like 2005, I think, called How He Loves Us. And it's this big worship song. Most Christians will know this song. And there's a line in this song written by John Mark McMillan, where he says, and heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss. And he got so much flack for the word sloppy wet kiss in his song. Like,
why?
the church went, the global church just went crazy. Like, they're like, no, we have to, and they literally, when churches sang this song, they changed the words of his song to make it more appropriate for church. And so, and I remember just being horrified by that, because I'm like, but that's not what he wrote. That's his song.
Yeah.
That's what he experienced, and that's what he is saying. So really, that's what I think is one of the struggles being, so maybe even like, so like, say me, who is a Christian artist, I am church planting, I work at a Christian school, and I have a song that basically bashes my wife's ex-boyfriend because I hate him, basically. And but I feel this like, basically it's a love song about how my wife and I got together, but it talks about some dark stuff in our past relationships and things, but it's scared, like I'm scared to release it because of what my Christian community will think.
And I mean, dude, I definitely feel for you. That's frustrating, because there is a perfect example of why things haven't changed and why it is so hard to try to be a Christian artist, especially in the music world, because there is a standard that you are held to. And it is cookie cutter. Like, they are afraid of people being real. Is really what it boils down to, in my mind, is it's too real for people. It's almost like they're expecting you to be a bunch of, like, Christian robots. Like, don't show too much emotion. Like, being incredibly conservative about your emotions, unless you're talking about God, and even then, like, tone it down just a little bit. And
yeah,
I mean, that's super frustrating, dude. I can only imagine.
But see, here's the crazy thing, kind of bringing this full circle, is you will never struggle with that.
No, I won't.
Which brings a smile to my face, in that I almost feel like Christian artists need to take notes from you, in that, you know, you feel a freedom to create whatever you feel inspired to create, despite what others will think, because it is honest art. You're creating an honest, transparent art, whatever's coming out of you. And what I'm just thinking, like, what if all the Christian artists in the world, you know, just gave up the act and created something honest? I wonder what would happen. I bet you anything, our world, the Christian world, would be drastically improved, because we'd all realize, wow, we're all really struggling with crap, and we can now finally be honest about it.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, by no means is my art absolutely incredible and breathtaking. I still got a ways to go, and that's one of the things, if I can give any advice as an artist, regardless of what medium it is, don't ever think that you have figured it out.
Yeah. No, amen.
If you are an artist, you will be learning for the rest of your life. Anytime you pick up a paintbrush or try something new or go to do a painting, if you go into it thinking that you know exactly how it's going to go, you know exactly what you're doing, you don't need to try any new techniques, your art is going to be subpar. Don't ever stop learning. And the other massive thing that I could tell anybody who is listening to this or is going to listen to this, stop giving a shit. It's your artwork. Do not give a single fuck about what anybody has to say about it. Do it because you want to make it. Do it because that is what you're passionate about. Because there are people out there that are going to appreciate the fact that you put your fucking time into it, and it's what you wanted. You didn't make it to fit specific parameters. You made it because that was what you wanted to make.
Dude, that's perfect. That's exactly... I mean, I needed to hear that as an artist, and I know that it's going to just really benefit everyone who's going to hear this. I know a lot of artists who listen to this, and it's going to be really great. So, dude, I know I have gone way over our allotted time, but I thank you, Nico. I know that if people are ever you're in Greeley, right? Give a plug to your shop so people know where you're at.
We're at Bombshell Bodyworks off 10th Street in Greeley. Got a lot of pretty great artists here, some good people for sure.
Awesome. And we'll, if you have like social media where people can follow you, I'm sure, you know, we can put that in the description and people can check out, you know, lyrics or other things that you do. And I don't think this will be the last time we talk. We definitely should keep talking because we have so much more we can talk about. So let's do it again. And Jude, just thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, dude. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, brother. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take it easy, man.
Bye.